Good morning, Story. How are you guys doing today? Good. It's so good to be back with you. And Dave, thank you so much for your kind words. And as Dave was just saying, I lead the Zero Collective Network, which is this family of churches that the Story Church is a part of. We're 4 churches in the greater Grand Rapids area, if you aren't aware of that. Just going after seeing 0 lives unchanged by Jesus. We just want people to know Jesus. That's our thing. And something you may not know is that we actually put all the sermons at all 4 churches. We have this meeting where we get together and we put those sermons together in community, all the lead pastors, those who preach. And so something I would just say is your pastor, Kyle, has made me a better preacher because he brings energy into every scene. I'm sure you can imagine. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning we meet. We all just kind of come in, and Kyle just comes in, and he's just energy. I don't know how he does it with 4 kids now that he is somehow getting up and helping he and Courtney getting ready every morning. So, but I love your church. I love to be a part of it. Every time I come here, I'm just blown away at all God is doing. I see new faces every time I'm here. This is awesome. I mean, you guys have kind of built this stage, hearing about what Hand to Hand is doing, and then now seeing these community groups people are starting to sign up and starting to get connected to one another. It's just awesome. I think some of the best days ahead or some of the best days of Story Church are ahead is where I think we're going. And so I hope you sense that too. I hope you sense that. I'm so grateful to Kyle and Josh and to the other leaders here. So what I'm doing is today, we're just kind of keep going. If you haven't been here over the summer, we're looking at these 12 spiritual disciplines. And these are different ways, spiritual disciplines are different ways that we care for the most important part of ourselves, our soul. And we deepen our relationship with God. And so every week we've looked at a different one. And today, the spiritual discipline that we're going to be looking at is the spiritual discipline of worship. And so Katie, just awesome job, Ola and Katie and Zach, just a moment ago, just leading us in worship and spending time just worshiping God together. So we're just going to expand on that a little bit. That's really all we're doing this morning, and talk about what is worship. How do we live a life of worship as a spiritual discipline every single day of our lives? So I'll begin this way. What would you do if you squandered something of incredible value and you didn't realize it until it was too late? How would you feel if you squandered something of incredible value, but the problem was you didn't realize until it was too late? Go ahead, if you guys could, to that first picture. This is a Chinese bowl. It was sold at a garage sale for $3. This guy had it in his family and everything, so at a garage sale, he sold it to another guy for $3. This same bowl later sold to Sotheby's for $2.2 million. Turns out it is a treasure from the Northern Song Dynasty, this ancient dynasty of China, and everything that they made now is just, valued at so much money. Can you imagine being the guy who sold it for $3 to the other guy who somehow figured out its real worth and value? Imagine how you'd feel. On a more personal note, go ahead to this next picture if you could. This is my dad's 1959 Martin Model 018 acoustic guitar. It's actually in my possession now. This is actually the guitar I learned how to play on. I was actually the worship leader for Frontline Church here in Grand Rapids for many years, and then became the lead pastor and now doing this job. And so this is the guitar I learned how to play on and lead worship with. Now, what you need to know is the way it became into my dad's possession is years and years ago, my dad didn't even play guitar, but he was in college, and there was this other guy in the dorm at college there at Butler University in Indianapolis. And this guy, apparently, the story goes, this guy had gotten his girlfriend pregnant. And so he was selling all of his stuff, to try to provide. And so my dad didn't even play guitar, but wanted to learn. And so he just said, hey, I see you got a guitar there. I'll give you $50 for it. So the guy said, sure. So my dad gives him $50. He takes the guitar. And for years and years, my dad's had this guitar. Well, a few years ago, my dad realized the name Martin kind of carries some value for acoustic guitars, if you weren't aware of that. And this thing and so he knew it was a 1959 Model 018 Martin, so he took it in to have it appraised. It turns out, because it's still in good condition, even though I beat it up quite a bit as a high school student, it's still got all the original hardware, the original bridge, the original neck, everything is original to it. It's a few years ago, actually, it was valued somewhere between $6,000 and $7,000 it appraised for. And that value is only going to keep going up as time goes on. Can you imagine being the guy who's like, yeah, $50, sounds good. He just had no idea what it was valued at. $3, here's the bowl at the garage sale. The reason I bring that up is because oftentimes that's what happens to us when it comes to worship. So a working definition of worship, go ahead to that next one if you would. Worship is the act of ascribing ultimate value to someone or something. That's what worship is. When we are worshiping, what we're doing is we're ascribing ultimate value to someone or something. In fact, our English word for worship comes from the Old English word worthship. That's where that word comes from, worthship. We are ascribing worth. We're ascribing value to someone or something. Now, a lot of people have God in their lives the same way that guy had that $3 Chinese bowl that he was selling at the garage sale. Or that guy had, this Martin guitar and sold it for $50. We have God in our lives. We believe in him. He's there. He's in the background. He's a part of the story of our lives. But we don't understand his ultimate value. We don't understand his ultimate worth. And Jesus actually speaks to this. He talks about what it means when we worship. We're ascribing ultimate value. We're holding God as the highest value of our lives. So in Jesus' day, in Matthew chapter 15, Jesus is speaking to the religious people of his day, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, and just the religious people who would come to the temple, and he describes their worship. He borrows from Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, in Isaiah 28. He borrows Isaiah's words, and he applies it to the people of his generation. But I would say we could apply it to our generation as well. And this is what Jesus says in Matthew 15. He says, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me, and that's why their worship is in vain." Their hearts weren't in it. I think what's interesting about that is Jesus doesn't say, the problem with their worship, the problem with our worship today is that we just need to try harder. We need to sing better. It's not what he says. We needed to do it differently. We need to, add some new songs. We need to change up some things, fix the lighting or whatever. He says that's not the problem with our worship. He said the real problem with our worship is that they don't know me, Jesus says, and they don't get what I'm worth. They don't understand me. They don't understand who I am, and they don't understand my worth or my value. That's the problem Jesus has. Imagine this, like my wife, Carrie, and I, we actually, this next week, we're going to head to Mackinac Island together to celebrate 24 years of marriage, with another couple. And so we're excited to go do that. I love my wife. Imagine if for my wife's birthday this coming November, imagine if what I did is I threw her a party. And for the party, I invited all my friends. I don't invite any of her friends. I just invite my friends to her birthday party. And then when it comes time to open the present, my wife loves horses. That's part of why we're going to Mackinac Island. She absolutely loves horses. What if for the present, I get her a motorcycle, which is something I would like. And then when the big moment comes, the cake comes out and it's time to sing happy birthday. I sing happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday, dear. And then I insert my name, Brian, happy birthday. Is this still a party about her? Is it a party that represents what she loves and who she is? No, and that's what Jesus is saying. Our worship, a lot of times, that's what it is. It's his party when we gather here, when we sing together. It's supposed to be about him. It's supposed to be about who he is, but oftentimes it ends up being about us, our preferences, our wants, and we do this without even realizing it. It's kind of human nature. We all just kind of have this tendency to turn it in toward ourselves. We make it about ourselves. And the reason we do that, the reason we worship him with our lips, but our hearts are far from him, we don't really understand who he is or ascribe ultimate value to him. Go ahead to that next one if you could. The reason is because you're already worshiping something, whether you realize it or not. You're already worshiping something. Something already has the highest place of value in your life. You're already ascribing ultimate value to something. There's something in your life, and for all of us, there's already something in your life that you're saying, if I could only have that. If I could only attain that, then I'd be happy. Then I'd be content. Then everything would be better. If only I could get that. That's what we do. At the heart of every single one of us, we have something that we treasure. You hear people talk about it all the time. If you just listen, maybe it's a job change that they treasure the most. If I could just get that job, if I could just switch over to that career, then, all my problems would be solved. Everything in my life would be better. People who struggle with going through a season of infertility and the pain of that, it's a baby. If we could just have a baby, it would fix everything in our marriage. It would fix everything in our lives. For people at a stage of life looking toward retirement, if we could just get to this number in the bank account, right? Then we could retire. Then we could get the house in Florida or wherever. If only we could have that. There's something already in each one of our lives that we're already ascribing ultimate value to. There's a treasure at the beginning of our lives. It's somewhere at the center of our lives that we're already worshiping. That's why oftentimes we have a hard time understanding the value of God in our lives and ascribing true value and worship to Him. By the way, Jesus faced this exact same temptation. Jesus wasn't immune to that temptation. He experienced it too. In fact, we just looked at Matthew 15, but if you rewind the clock in the Gospel of Matthew and go all the way back to Matthew 4, Jesus, to begin his ministry, Jesus goes out into the wilderness for 40 days and 40 nights to be with God, and he experiences 3 temptations. The enemy comes, the devil comes, and he begins to tempt him. And Jesus experiences these 3 temptations in the wilderness. Now, this is before he's done anything for God. This is before he's, done any miracle, healed anybody, given any sermons, fed anyone. Before any crowd is gathered. This is just Jesus out in the wilderness with God, and he faces these 3 temptations. And these are the big 3. They're the big 3 that Israel faced in the Old Testament, and they're the big 3 temptations that we face, all of us face as human beings. And what's so interesting, we're going to look at the third temptation here today, because the third of those 3 temptations deals with worship. The third temptation was all about worship. And Jesus was actually tempted to worship something other than God and hold it as his highest value. But we miss a lot of times what he really went through with that. So let's look at this together. This is Matthew 4, verse 8. This is the third of the 3 temptations. It says this, "Again, the devil took Jesus to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. 'All this I will give you,' he said, 'if you will bow down and worship me.'" So he takes him to a high place. Here's all the kingdoms of the world, and literally Satan says, "You can have it all if you'll just bow down and worship me." Now, I don't know about you, but whenever I read that, I'm always like, why would worshiping the devil be a temptation for Jesus? You ever wonder that? Like, Son of God, Messiah, like, really worship the devil? Like, why would that be a temptation? It seems like that wouldn't even come close to a temptation for Jesus. But what you have to understand here is that this temptation got at the heart of everything that Jesus would have treasured. Literally, what Satan says is, here is all the kingdoms of the world. And he's saying, I'm going to step aside. The limited amount of dominion and authority that I've been given for this time, I'm not even going to get in your way. You can have it all, he's saying to Jesus. Think about this. This was Jesus' opportunity to end all suffering. He could have been in charge of all kingdoms. He could have stopped all wars. He could have ended all injustices, could have stopped all poverty, could have made things. Jesus teaches his disciples later to pray. He says, he teaches them to pray, "Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Do you realize this was his chance to do that? He could have made his kingdom the kingdom of all the kingdoms. He could have made things exactly the way he wanted them to be in the world. There's just one catch, Satan says. You've got to worship me. You've got to worship me. You've got to ascribe ultimate value, worth to me. Now, we don't understand also kind of the hidden piece of this, and that's that this temptation also offered Jesus a shortcut around the cross. So it's Satan literally saying, you can have all the kingdoms of the world. You can be exalted to the highest place right now. Everything can be exact. Your kingdom can come. Your will can be done on earth as it is in heaven. You can do it, and you don't even have to go through the cross. See, what we understand, the gospel tells us that God's plan of salvation from the beginning, from the book of Genesis all the way back in the beginning of the Bible, God's plan of salvation was that Jesus would come as a suffering servant, as a sin offering, that he would sacrifice his life, that he would die a sacrificial death on the cross, paying the price for your sin and for my sin. And Philippians 2 says that Jesus didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped or held onto, but made himself nothing, became a servant. He entered in to become a human being and then died on the cross. And it said after that, Jesus rose from the grave, and then he will be exalted to the highest place, where he will be at the highest place above every name, above every kingdom, and every knee will bow, every tongue will confess in heaven and on earth, and guess where else? Under the earth, that Jesus Christ is Lord. So Jesus Christ eventually is going to be exalted to the highest place. He is going to get there. But in this moment right now, Satan is literally saying, I'll just step out of the way. You can have it right now. You can have it, man. I'm not even going to fight you. You don't even have to go through the cross. You don't even have to suffer and die. The only catch is you got to put me in first place. You got to value me. You got to ascribe ultimate worth, ultimate value to me. And that temptation that Satan was using on Jesus is the same temptation that he uses every single day to you and to me and to every single human being. You can have it all right now. No, and you don't even have to suffer. You don't have to worry. But what are you going to put in the place of God in your life? What are you going to ascribe ultimate value, ultimate worth to? Worship me and you can have it now without all the suffering. So go ahead to that next slide if you would. I would argue your ultimate problems in life, my ultimate problems in life, all of us, our ultimate problems in life don't stem from our situations, don't stem from our circumstances, don't stem from bad things that other people do to us and cause us to, our ultimate problems all stem from what we choose to worship, from what we choose to put in the highest place of value, the highest place of worth in our lives. Whatever you're holding as being ultimate value, ultimate worth in your life, other than the person of Jesus, will let you down. Whatever you put in that place of worship other than God, it eventually will let you down. It's not stable. It's not secure. It eventually can be taken away from you. It eventually will be removed from you, either through age or through, dying someday. Whatever it is that we hold and that we value other than the person of Christ will eventually be stripped from us and taken away from us. Here's the truth. Every treasure other than Jesus, whatever we treasure other than Jesus, will demand that you die in order to purchase it. Think about it. Well, whatever it is in your life, then the message is run after me, sacrifice everything to get me, chase after me with everything you have, and then you can. Once you have me, then you'll have security, then you'll have beauty, then you'll have ultimate meaning and purpose in your life. Think about this. What the gospel tells us is that Jesus is the only treasure. When we treasure him above everything else, Jesus is the only treasure that dies in order to purchase us. Jesus ran after us. Jesus went to the cross on our behalf, and he died in order to purchase us. And in doing that, Jesus affirmed our value and our worth. That's the beauty of the gospel, is that Jesus didn't fail when he was tempted. Jesus didn't give in. And so, in fact, we can look at this. He doesn't take the bait. Matthew 4:10, Jesus' response, he says, "Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only." So the way Jesus defends himself against that temptation, as he says, the word says, and he's actually quoting Deuteronomy 6:13. That's what he's quoting there in the Old Testament. And he says, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Now, what's amazing is Deuteronomy 6, what Jesus is quoting there, is actually an incredibly important passage of Scripture for the people of God, for the Israelites. Deuteronomy 6 contained what's known as the Shema. It was the most important prayer that the Israelites prayed. They got up every single morning and they prayed it. It was a part of their rhythm, their regular day. And the Shema also contains the greatest commandment, or what Jesus called the greatest commandment. It says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. And then next it says, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Worship the Lord your God and serve him only. It doesn't say, love him along with a whole bunch of other stuff. Worship him. Just make sure you worship him too. All the other stuff you're worshiping. No. He has to have the highest place. Jesus goes back to Scripture and he quotes and he says, no. There's nothing that can be above God. Nothing. Love the Lord your God with everything, your entire being, your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and worship the Lord your God and serve him only. He's got to have the highest place. He's got to have the number one place. Now, I know what you're thinking right now, because it's the same thing I think whenever I read that or I encounter it. Immediately, the loophole I go through in my head is like, yeah, that's great, but he was Jesus, right? Yeah, that's awesome that he didn't give in to that temptation. That's awesome that Jesus was able to do that and to hold God in the highest place of his life, but he was Jesus after all. I'm me. And so, how do we get there? How do we begin to move? How do we begin to ascribe ultimate value to God? How do we move to this place in our lives where he is the focus of our worship? Where we're not just sort of coming near him with our lips and giving lip service, and our hearts aren't in it, but we actually love him with our entire being, our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we have ascribed ultimate value to him. How do we do that? So I want to give you something. This was something that was invented by a guy named Bernard of Clairvaux. Bernard of Clairvaux was actually a French abbot who lived in the 12th century, so a long time ago, all right? And what Bernard of Clairvaux did is it's called a treatise on love. And what he does is he walks through these 4 different stages that we move through when our hearts are growing in love and in worship to God. When we're moving from kind of like the place we start, every single person starts as human beings with kind of our selfish, kind of self-focused love. And he talks about how as we're discipled, as we grow in our love for God, as we move to a place where he is the ultimate value of our lives. We love him with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we worship him only. These are kind of like these 4 stages we go through. I'm going to give you the first 3 of these stages that we move through. And the reason I'm not going to give you the 4th one is because what Bernard of Clairvaux actually said is the 4th one of these stages, the 4th one of these movements, we only experience once we're in heaven. Because we only get to the 4th stage of worship once we're in heaven, once we're free of these earthly bodies. Did you guys know? You know what we're going to be doing in heaven? Do you know about what that is? In Revelation 6, it talks about how we're going to be gathered around the throne, and what we're going to be doing all day, all night is joining the angels in worshiping God. If you haven't figured it out yet, that's the thing everything's moving toward. That's what we're going to be doing. And the beauty of that is we're not going to be bored by that. We hear that and we go, man, what if I don't like the music? Or what if I want to go do something else? We're not going to feel that way because Jesus truly will be, God truly will be, as the one on the throne, the ultimate value of our lives. He'll be the most important thing we could possibly give our time to. It's hard for us as human beings to even think about that, isn't it? So Bernard of Clairvaux gives these 4 stages. I'm going to give you the first 3 because we're still here on earth, okay? Here's the first one. Here's where all of us start out as human beings. We start out with, I'll love me for me. I'll love me for me. This is a selfish love, right? This is where all of us begin. I'll love me for me is kind of like only concerned with my own needs being met. An illustration of this would be this is like how a consumer loves a brand, right? So think about how people will say things like, I love Starbucks. When people say, I love Starbucks, they're not really saying I sacrificially love Starbucks. I will do anything for Starbucks. They're saying, I love me drinking some Starbucks, right? That's what they're really saying. I love me with a cup of Starbucks in my hand. I love Apple. I love Apple products. Nobody is saying, I really love Apple products. What they're saying is, I love me using an Apple product. I love what an Apple product does for me so you see what I'm saying? That's I'll love me for me. We worship God with our lips, but our hearts are far from him, right? It's basically a love that's only concerned with me, only concerned with my needs getting met. But what happens is as we start to know God, as we start to follow him, as we start to entrust our lives to him, we move to this second stage, which is I'll love God for me. Now, this is great because in this stage, we are actually beginning to love God. We're actually beginning to ascribe value and worth to him, not just to ourselves. But it's still a selfish love. It's still motivated by what he'll do for us. Most of our prayers, if you think about it, most of our prayers are centered around this, right? And again, not that it's wrong to ask God for prayer, for answer. He invites us to do that. But for so much of the time, we kind of skip over the worship part, the praise part, and we just skip right to, okay, God, here's my list. Will you do this for me, this for me, this for me, this for me? I'll love God, but I'll love him for me. We learn to act unselfishly, but it's with kind of selfish motives. That makes sense? An illustration of that would be kind of like how an infant loves his or her mother. Right? You ever seen a newborn baby with their mother? Man, newborn babies love their mother. They love their mother so much. But they don't really love their mother for who their mother is. They don't have any awareness of that. They just love their mother because their mother literally is providing for every single need of their life, really. I mean, if that mother didn't do everything for that infant would die. So, of course, the infant loves his or her mother. That's I'll love God for me. That's still a selfish love, but I'm loving God for me. That kind of worship, that kind of love of God still has not understood the gospel. And why I would say that is because it's still based on I'm going to worship. I'm still trying to attain God's love. I'm trying to do something to earn his love, to earn his favor. I'll worship him. I'll love him, but it's because I got to do that in order to get something here for me. Bernard of Clairvaux says the best stage when we finally move into true worship, when we finally move into as human beings, true love of God, is when we get to this point where we truly can say, I love God for God. I love God for God. You see expression after expression of this in the Bible. Think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Anybody know that story? Anybody remember that story? If you've grown up in church, you've heard it. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're about to be thrown in the fiery furnace. And the reason is because King Nebuchadnezzar, he's angry at them because they won't bow down and worship his golden statue, right? And so they're about to be thrown in the fire. Do you remember what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego say? They say, King Nebuchadnezzar, our God is able to save us even if you throw us in that fiery furnace. But then what do they say? But even if he does not, we want you to know, we're still not going to bow down and worship your golden statue. That's I love God for God. Even if it doesn't work out, even if God doesn't rescue me from this, he is still so worthy, he is still so valuable that I'm still going to worship him. I'm not going to bow. Sorry. Another example is Job. If you've ever read the story of Job in the Old Testament, Job is a righteous man. He has so many blessings. And by the first couple of chapters of Job, basically everything is stripped from him. His health, his family dies, all his wealth, all his blessings, his crops, his land, everything is taken from him. And you have this incredible expression, his response in Job chapter 2. It says he falls down on the ground and worship. And that line he says, you give and you take away, but I still choose to bless your name. Like God, everything I have came from you anyway. You get to be the one who decides. You give it, you take it away. But I'm still going to bless you. No matter whether you give me blessings or not, I'm going to bless you because you're worthy. That's I'll love God for God. Do you see it? And that's the kind of worship Jesus was talking about. That's the kind of love that Deuteronomy 6 is talking about. Eventually, a person would learn to love their mother this way, right? Like we talked about, like the infant with their mother. You know, at this stage of life, I love my mom, but I love her for who she is, right? I don't just love my mom for what she does for me or whatever, but I can actually say I love my mom for the person that she is, whether she ever does anything for me again or not. We can only worship like that when we understand the gospel. When we've embraced the gospel and taken it into our lives and applied it to our lives, that's the only time we can come to a place where we can really worship like that. Because what happens is when we really understand the gospel, we understand that everything that we have has been gifted us by Christ, by his death on the cross, by what he's provided for us. And so therefore, when we worship God, when we come to him in prayer, whatever, there's nothing to gain, nothing to lose, nothing to prove. We're just surrendered to him. We love him and we worship him, not for what he'll do for us, but from what he's already done for us. Do you see it? That's I'll love God for God. I can think of a handful of times in my life where I've seen I'll love God for God kind of worship. It's rare that you really experience it or see it. In the year 2010, I was on a missions trip with a group of other pastors in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. I think it's awesome that we're getting involved as a Zero Collective in Guatemala. We have a few different global partners. And so I was down in 2010 with this group of other pastors, and we were there. I don't know if you remember, but in January of 2010, if some of you remember the news at that time, there was an 8-point-something earthquake in Haiti, and it just devastated right near the capital there at Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and just devastated the whole area. So I was there in Haiti just a few months after that earthquake had gone through and just leveled the place. And so I remember one of the things we would do on this missions trip is we would go down with this food truck. It was like this food ration truck, and we would drive down every day, and we would hand out like bags of rice and beans, these rations, to this group of people that were living in a tent city. And to describe a tent city is exactly what it sounds like in Haiti. It's hundreds of people living in these sort of makeshift tents in the mud. Just in squalor. I mean, it reeked. There was no, plumbing, no sewer, no nothing. It's just people living literally in the mud in these tents. And to be clear, this tent city that we would go down to every day, it didn't exist before the earthquake. In other words, these were people who had homes. These were people who had a community and lived. In fact, the way we were connected with them is they were all part of a church together. That's how the mission that we were part of was connected with them, was this local church that was there. And now after the earthquake, they're all in this tent city. So we would go down. I remember like getting out of the truck, and so like a line, they would like form a line, and they would come through, and we, off the truck, we would be handing like bags of rice and beans, and some of the most incredible, horrible human suffering I've ever witnessed with my own eyes in real life was this line of people as they would come through. I remember some of them, like I remember like kids who would have like twisted like limbs because during the earthquake, like somebody had their arm broken or their leg broken, but because there was no medical treatment, the bones didn't get set, and so the arm was just like that now. People missing limbs. There were mothers coming through with more kids, like they'd lost their husband, and more kids than they knew how to take care of or what they could possibly do with. Just the most dejected, sagging-shouldered group of people. And so I remember just standing there. It was almost overwhelming in this tent city, handing out these rice and beans. And I'll never forget, as they're coming through, they started singing this song. Like with one voice, like one person started it, and then like everybody starts singing this song together, and it's like thunderously loud, like at the top of their lungs, they're singing. But I don't understand any of the words because I don't speak Creole. They're singing in Creole, and so I don't understand the words. I don't know what they're singing. I'm standing there, but after a couple minutes goes by, I realize, I know this tune. I know this song. You know how your brain does that, where it's like, I don't understand any of the words, but like I recognize the tune, so I'm trying to figure out, and finally it dawns on me, they're singing the old hymn, How Great Thou Art. Parents who have lost children who have lost parents and are now orphans, but they're all part of this church, this community together. They're singing in their own language. You know the words. If you've grown up in church, you know the words of that old hymn. When Christ shall come with shout of acclamation and take me home, what joy will fill my heart. Then I will bow in humble adoration and there proclaim, my God, how great thou art. That is true worship. That is a love God for God. When you're in a tent city and you can still sing that song, He has become the truest thing that you have fixed your hope in. He's become the greatest treasure of your life. I can't sing that song to this day without thinking of that line of people and without that challenging me in my own worship. I'll love God for God. When you have Jesus like that, here's what I want to leave you with. When you have Christ in that place in your life as the highest value, you can go through anything and you're going to be okay. When you have Jesus like that, nothing can shake you, not even an 8-point-something earthquake. Nothing can tempt you anymore. Nothing can ultimately knock you off your game. That's what we're invited to do. Put him in the highest place. Is he in your life? But he's in your life like that $3 bowl. He's there. He's in the background. When I need stuff, I'll pray to him. Or are you every day in your life moving forward toward Jesus as the highest and the most valuable thing in your life? That's worship. I'll love God for God. So a couple thoughts here as we close. We've tried to just kind of give some practical thoughts with each one of these. As we sing, we're going to sing a song here in a moment that is actually a picture of what we just talked about, Revelation 6. It's a picture of, heaven and what worship is going to be like, joining the angels around the throne of God. That's where everything is headed toward if you're a follower of Christ, is this picture. So the first thing, I just want to say, don't fix your worship here on earth to your circumstances. Don't fix your worship to what's going on right now in your life. Maybe things are good for you. Maybe things are bad for you. Don't fix your worship to your preferences. Well, I wish they'd sing that song. Well, I like this better than this, whatever. Don't fix your worship to that. That's not going to last you. That won't get you through the hard stuff in life. And don't fix your, like Job, don't fix your worship to your blessings. Whether you've got this, whether you've got that, don't let anything else be the treasure of your heart. Fix your worship, even as we sing this last song. And as you pursue your life is about fixing your worship to the person of Jesus Christ and letting him be the highest value of your life. Will you pray with me? Jesus, as we come to you today, what we know is that every single day, Satan puts in front of us temptations for something that's right now, something that's right in front of us right now, something that we could treasure or value and believe the lie that, oh, if I just get that, if I'm just able to attain that, then I'd be happy, then I'd be worth something, then I'd be content, and it's something other than you. And so Jesus, today, we just turn from those things and we fix our eyes on you. And we just recognize, Lord, that you, Jesus, are the greatest treasure that we could possibly fix our gaze on and fix our lives to. And if we have you, we can go through anything. If we have you, Jesus, you are our tower, you're our strong refuge. What you did for us on the cross and the life that you gave us by your resurrection, that's where our hope lies. And when we have that, we can deal with anything. We can go through anything. And so, God, we thank you for that. And so this morning we worship you. We put you in the highest place. We acknowledge that you are worthy above everything else. And whether you do for us what we think in our human limited wisdom would be good, whether you answer every prayer the way we want you to, whether everything turns around we want it to or not, we just say this morning, God, you are still worthy. You're worthy. You're God regardless. And because of who you are, we worship you. So this morning we join our voices to do that. It's in Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said,